is called to order at 7 o'clock p.m. on May 27th. In Mary Ann's absence, Chuck read the minutes from the April meeting. The minutes were approved as read. Bob gave the treasurer's report, which was approved. Chuck reported that the new museum scheduled through June will be 11 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday, 4:30. 4:30 Monday, okay. 4:30, that doesn't make sense, Chuck.
Will be 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Oh, you're doing this guy.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Monday through Friday, 4:30 till 4:30, okay. And Saturday will be 10 until 2. The sign-up sheet was sent around for volunteers to staff Saturdays in June. The board has decided that the Historical Society will again serve apples-giver in a tent behind the library on Friday, July 17th, and Saturday, July 18th, from 9 until 3 on both days. Amy Duholm has been working on an application for 501c3 tax exempt status for the Historical Society. This has been recommended by the state and county societies as well as our grant writer. The art opening night program and the exhibit in May went well, thanks to Kyle Clemens and the 12th grade Luck Art students for their work in organizing and set up for the event. There were lots of Luck folks that this event brought into the museum for the first time. Marilyn Nelson introduced her friend Phyllis Knudsen, a longtime basket weaver and teacher from Amy. Phyllis gave a talk on different kinds of baskets and showed examples of many different baskets she has acquired over the years. Her present emphasis is on Scandinavian birch bark basket designs. Phyllis has also donated a book to the Historical Society on woven baskets. The meeting was adjourned at 8:30. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 24th with Eiler Ravenholt, who will talk about early Danish cooperative creameries in the Midwest and especially Luck. A demonstration on making butter and another on freezing homemade ice cream will be part of the program.
Thank you. And the mistakes are all mine. Mary Ann wasn't here, and I made the mistakes and spelled it to catch those word in yours. Okay, is Bob here?
No.
Bob Duholm's not here?
No, Diane said he went to his dad.
Oh, okay. We need more chairs.
We took care of it, Chuck.
Okay, okay. All right, the treasurer's report, I guess we'll get later on if Bob comes in. So, now a couple of announcements then. Dan Beal has been working on a geological history exhibit along with Russ Hansen and a friend of his, Sue Birch. And Dan, you want to say a few things about that?
Sure. You know, one of the purposes of the Historical Society is to bring us all back to a stage that we weren't living in so that you can become acquainted with it. So the museum here is chock full of items that your forebears and some of you used when you were youngins and when they were young ones. And before them, of course, we had the Indians, and before them, what did we have? We had the animals and the geology of the area. And so one of our objectives is to help each other learn more about the geology of this area right here where Luck is. And believe it or not, I did it on purpose. Can you see this? Now, Sue Birch is a geologist friend of ours who is also an artist. There's Luck.
We had a volcano?
We had several volcanoes right here. We had some of the land just to the west of us go underneath a portion that's to the right. Then about a few billion years later, we had some of this go underneath the land from the west. So it was changing all the time. And as it changed, the land here changed, and luckily We have Main Street now that was left from the glacier. No, it wasn't. But this is what we're trying to teach this, and we envision having a whole series of sheets about this size posted around. And it's not easy because we've been keeping these folded up. No, that isn't the one either. We did have right here a large body of water, an ocean. And all these plankton and everything else were right here. And that's going to be part of our exhibit. And you can see here how the glacier came down, one of the glaciers. Several of them came through this area and left valleys and left us, the most recent glacier left us the Straight River. And that Straight River, it was a channel. And the channel is nothing more than a channel that became a tunnel and then became a river, all under the ice. And now many of you realize that right here, there were 5,500 feet of ice, right here. And it went just a little bit southwest. And that was the last glacier that came through. And as that receded, melted, it left the Great Lakes, but it also left large bodies of water. It left Bone Lake bone dry, and it left all kinds of various pieces of anatomy on the landscape. And we will have these with an explanation of what it means underneath, a little bit of literature underneath each one. And then we're asking you and also our Mineral Society here in town to donate some samples of rocks that came from various stages of development of the glacial area right here. Better not say any more because I don't know anymore.
Amen.
Well, it's easy to fool you. But anyhow, you can see here how the glacier formed, and underneath that little blue was a river under the glacier, and carved a tunnel or a channel underneath and left the river. And that is what the Straight River is, which has never been straight. And I don't know what they call it straight. Maybe because it was so crooked. And here's Bob to talk about money. But speaking about money, each time that we take one of Sue's drawings like this, we have to develop it and blow it up into a large picture. And that's going to cost us about $10 each.
Yeah, so if you want to sponsor a little picture to a big one, all you have to do is contribute $10, and we'll put your name prominently somewhere around it.
On the back side.
And if you don't, but anyhow, it would be nice if you could help us by contributing, not rocks, but some money so we can develop this. Sue Birch is a single gal who raises cats and has over 100 of them. And also does a great job in geology textbooks for geologists. And in one of these drawings, this one for instance, she's got over 50 hours of development, 50. And there's, what are there, about 8 of these that we're going to, and she's donating her time. And she doesn't even live here. She lives way down toward Amory. If she can donate that much time and energy into helping us develop our knowledge, why can't we devote a little bit of our cash to her and to developing these pictures?
So get that hat moving around.
Hats. Not hats. But anyhow, what we are going to do, and are you going to talk about that?
Yes, yeah.
Well, he'll tell you what we're going to try and do. Thank you.
We're going to try to pay for this. We're going to try to pay for this partly for the back door by asking for an operational wall grant. And we got $1,000 a couple of years ago for this projector that we're using tonight. And we'll see if we can get some more money to pay Sue something, and then for the processing and so on, the pictures, and then enlarging them. So we'll see how that goes.
But your name could be right up there with Polk Burnett Electric too, if you had your $10 contributed.
And it would only cost me $10?
That's all.
Okay. Okay, you also are noticing that there's some pictures up here of what schools and classes and so on. And this is kind of a process too. And Diane is going to tell us something about what she's looking for the school exhibit.
Okay, I'll keep this short. We are trying to do a display on country schools, and we've got a couple of country pictures here, we have some more too. And reunions, the last big reunion was the 75th one in 96. There's some pictures on both sides. We're also looking for, if you have things at home that would pass down to you or do yourself, we're looking for books and maybe uniforms, maybe some sports items, you know, things that you remember having when you were going to school.
Okay, so contact you if,
You can contact me,
if you have
bring it,
something.
either bring it in or let me know what you have and something you can come together.
Great, thanks, Diana. Bob, the treasurer's report?
This will be very brief. I grabbed it on the way. The balance, I think the last meeting, balance in our regular checking account was $3,122. That was at the end of April. As of the end of May, it is $2,651. Then as of today, the balance in regular checking, pardon me for not putting this together before I come out. Is $2,308. The biggest changes or expenditures in that in income, we had $243 of income during the last month, and we had the biggest expenditure was $400 that we expended for the filing for the 501c3, which was the federal fee for the application. And the operating account was balance of $6,204 as of the end of April, and it's at the end of May it was $6,111, and again the operating, and now it's at $6,035. The expenses that come out of the operating are the utilities, basically, and which this time of the year they're the lowest, because gas is the biggest one of the, or the heat, I should say, the biggest of the utilities. So, any questions?
Okay, books are always open if you're interested in looking at them. So, okay, a couple of other quick things.
Too far back to reach.
The board decided to have our apple skeeper booth open Friday and Saturday, July 16th and 17th during Lucky Days. And we'll be open both days, and we're looking for volunteers to help make apple skeeper. And you know, this is kind of a job training program too. If you've never heard of apple skeeper, most of you have, but this is a chance to learn. So I'm just going to pass this around, and we've broken it up into morning and afternoon sessions, 3 hours apiece. And if we have enough people, it's really kind of fun. The first question a lot of people ask is just what is apple skeeper? So anyway, I'll pass that around. And while we're passing things around, I'll go over here and pass around a museum volunteer greeter sheet, starting this Saturday, by the way, but this is for July. So I'll pass that around. If you feel in the mood to spend 4 hours here at the museum on Saturdays, that's not bad either. It's kind of fun, especially in the summertime when a lot of people come in. Let's see, Experience Works is cutting our hours back at the end of June, and so we'll have the same hours during the week, except we're not going to be open on Monday. So Maryland can stay home on Monday. But anyway, they cut back from 25 hours to 20 hours, and we can't do much about that. But we're still open quite a bit of the time. Let's see. We're talking about landscaping around here, and you know, some of you have noticed that some of the shrubs that were planted 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, are dead. They had a hard winter. And we're thinking that maybe there are some folks who want some extra hostas that they could trim out and so on, and we could plant some hostas along the edge of the building. Carol?
I think we have some from Bone Lake Greenhouse.
Oh, okay, good. If anybody else has a
Someone wants to plant
warehouse
them.
or something they want to share, they'll contact somebody from the society.
I've got some really lush creeping Charlie that would make a nice ground cover in that shade.
You won't have to plant one of them.
Yeah.
I've given up trying to get rid of the big Charlie. I don't like it.
It's green.
There'll be no regular meeting in July because of our lucky days. And we were thinking in place of a regular meeting about showing a classic movie. And how many people, rather than a meeting, having no meeting at all, would be kind of interested in seeing a classic movie? Would you raise your hand? Well, I am.
It depends on what movie's done.
Well, we were thinking about the Unfortunate Queen, or what are some others to us?
Well, I don't know, Ed said last time that he thought a cowboy movie would be good.
He wants Tom Mix.
No, I was thinking about To Kill a Mockingbird, but all the kids see those in school. But for me, I can see it over and over again and still enjoy it. But anyway, we'll let you know about that. And then finally, one of the more important things, you've heard about our application for a 501c3 status. And Amy Duval has given a lot of her time filling out the application. And we really appreciate it. She's doing a great job. But she found that our bylaws didn't qualify. So the board is requesting that we make some changes. We have to do this at a regular meeting that's been publicized like this one. And these are the changes that we want to make. Can you see that? Maybe we
I'll
could get
catch
rid
the
of
lights.
a light or two? Okay, first thing we'd like to do, we'd like to change just the organization. I put in an article and the appropriate article number. The original one didn't have that. It was hard to find things, hard to explain to people what part of the bylaws you were looking at. So, very, very small, minor detail. Secondly, since we are incorporated, we will be incorporated as a nonprofit organization. We are now, as a branch or a subchapter of the County Society, we are incorporated. So everything that refers to the Luck Area Historical Society will be changed to incorporated at the end. Small thing, but the IRS requires that. Thirdly, change Article 4, Paragraph 2 by deleting the last sentence. This has to do with elected officers. All offices are limited to 3 consecutive years in one position. And most of us have been in our position for 4 years already. It's interesting what you see when you read the bylaws. And we're a little bit concerned that, we'll have to replace everybody all at one time. So we would like to just scratch that. And I'll invite anybody to run for the board or as an elected officer. But I don't think we dare say that if you've been in 3 years, you just can't run again. Okay, that's not required, by the way, for the 501c3, but we decided we probably would have to do that. Add Article 16. This was a big one, dissolution. I don't know how easy it is for you to see that, but they want to know that since we're a nonprofit organization, that if we ever dissolve, that the money goes, to somebody other than the officers, maybe. Anyway, they just want to make sure that it goes to the right place. So we borrowed some information from other bylaws, and it would read this. Thus, upon dissolution of the organization, the Board of Directors, after paying or making provisions for the payment of all liabilities and obligations of the organization, shall distribute to other museums or organizations which at the time qualify as exempt organizations under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, or to a governmental unit for a public purpose, all remaining society assets, both financial and material. So those are the changes, the additions to the bylaws, the changes that the board suggested. And do you have any questions? We need a 3/4 vote to make these apply. Okay, do I have a motion to adopt these?
Motion to adopt.
Okay, move to adopt?
Move to adopt.
Okay. Bob, you were there second? Okay. Okay, the motion's been made to accept these, to adopt these changes to the bylaws. Is there any discussion, any question? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody opposed. Okay. So the bylaws will be changed. And let's see, and then I guess unless there's something else, we have a main speaker.
Before we go to that, would you like to say something about your upcoming book sale down at the County Museum?
Oh, sure. I'm Joanne Hallquist, and I am a member up here as well as the Balsam Lake Historical, or the County Historical Society. We had a book sale weekend before last, and we're going to have a book sale on July 3 and 4, from about 10 o'clock to 4 each day. We have a wide variety of books that have been donated in the past to the museum and are not necessarily related to the mission of the museum. They include novels, various types of literature, old magazines, Montgomery Ward catalogs, religious music, and
Foreign language books?
Scandinavian
Yes,
language books,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
And I don't think we have anything other than Scandinavian.
Yeah. I was down to the last sale, and I got a big box of them, and I'm having fun reading those things. I'm really up on the 1905 to 1906 Harper's Men. Been reading those stories.
Somebody else came and bought our blue books, which is good. Somebody came and bought Wisconsin Magazine of History, which we also were selling. Anyway, we have a wide variety of books, including history and politics. We're not selling on Polk County. Those will be kept as part of our permanent records at the museum. But we welcome all of you to come buy our books.
Okay, thank you. Eiler Ravenholt, I think the Ravenholt name goes back about as far as you can go in lot history. I think your grandmother came in about 1885, is that right, Eiler?
Yeah, they both came in the early 1880s.
So many of you grew up with Eiler, and so it's an old, well-known name here in Locke, and the Ravenholt family has been real supporters of Locke, and especially the library and museum. We really appreciate that. But anyway, his grandmother was Hannah, they called her Ravenholt, was the first butter maker and the first cooperative creamery in the state of Wisconsin. There's a marker out here on the highway. And anyway, he's going to tell us a little bit about, I think, cooperative Danish creameries in general, and specifically about the West Denmark creamery. So Eiler, go ahead.
Thank you. Those of you who don't know, Little Butternut probably aren't in this audience, but in any case, you can see Luck, which of course in the early days was further east on the shore, Big Butternut. Little Butternut, I thought I'd tell a little bit about West Denmark, which was the community organized around the west and north side in particular of Little Butternut Lake. And right up there where the end is very close to where the creamery became located. There we have a close-up shot of it, and you can see well, Robert Peterson's place is up in there, Kanapaki's house, and Betty Bond's house is right there in the north end, and the creamery was just to the left of that, and Christian Hendrickson's house, where his great-grandson Neil now lives, was just on the west side of Little Butternut Creek, as you can see on the map there. Next picture. That's just a shot of, a nice shot of Little Butternut. It was a great lake to fish and swim in when we were kids. And I think it's still a great lake to fish in. I haven't gotten over there for some time. Next one. There's the Kanapaki house, which before that was known as the Cock House. Holger Koch, who was the minister in West Denmark from 1927 to 32, left the parsonage and moved into that house. Before that, my uncle Chris Peterson and Agnes Peterson lived in it at one time. I don't know the history of it beyond that, but the creamery is just to the southwest of where that house is located. And there's a shot of West Denmark's first church, which was built in 1900. And I can remember the night when lightning struck it and burned it to the ground in 1937. We were living about almost a mile south of there, and I can recall seeing the flames from it over the treetops. And that is a picture of JP's store, which West Denmark had a fairly active community in those days. We had JP's store, and we also had a post office in West Denmark, and it was a competitor, you might say, as a small urban center or village center from the town of Bleck, village of Bleck. Next one. That's just a picture of the called the Danske Engels Grønneskole from 1890 to 1906, and which basically taught classes in both Danish and English. Next one. These are the Danish churches in Polk County, and one in West Denmark is on the top left there, one in Bone Lake, the next one down on the left side. And then the church in Eureka, which was not a Lutheran church, it's a Baptist church. And then on the right column coming down, St. Peter's Church, which you know where that is up here in North Bleck, and church in Cushing. And then a church in Milltown, which I must say, I have no memory of it. Had been changed and a new one built before I was around.
Eiler, is the one up at St. Peter's the same church that's here?
I think so.
So that's the only one standing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's M.C. Peterson's old farm. M.C. was sort of the founder of the West Denmark community. Had much to do with encouraging other people to come to the area, and that shows his farmstead. I don't know what year it was taken. I think he died in about 1920 or so. But next one, please. That's a picture of M.C. Peterson. We had a tendency to refer to a lot of the Danes by their initials rather than by their first name. And another tradition you've got out there was referring to women who had the same first name as belonging to their husband. So it became Marie Hawkers or Marie Torvals, depending on which family. Next. That's Casper Johansson's log house. And Casper Johansson's log house was out on 35 where JJ Club Bar is now. And I brought this along because he made this. At least my grandparents were neighbors of his, and my mother said that they had gotten this from Casper Johansson. I'll pass it around, you can look at it. He did a pretty good job as an artisan. Next. That's the house and parsonage, and they had a, I'm not thinking of the word now, West School, Edwin.
Seminary.
Seminary.
The seminary.
Yeah, seminary. At West Denmark in the 1890s, and as well as the parsonage. And you can see the lake down behind it there.
Now, are one of those buildings still down there?
No, I don't think either of those buildings have been in
Because isn't there a building
existence.
down below you?
Minor?
Or not?
Yeah.
The building to the left is still alive. It's across from the Pioneer home, and lived in by, I forget who's living there now.
Oh,
He has moved down the valley, onto the lake, and hauled into Luck.
who did that?
Martin Peterson.
Huh. I didn't know that.
The other one burned.
Okay, next. There we see a view of the Creamery, which the Creamery was organized in the spring of 1885. They met and proceeded to try to organize the Creamery, and got started with it. And this is the eventual result of it. I should give you a little more detail of it. The Creamery was located here actually because Niels Peterson offered them an acre of land. Bill Foster offered them an acre of land. William Foster did to build it in Luck. But most of the people that got together to organize the Creamery were Danes from West Denmark, and by a vote of 59-5, they accepted Niels Peterson's offer, and William Foster got only 5 of the farmers that wanted to have it over by big butternut instead. Farming at this time was very much a subsistence effort, and the average family income per year was about $100 in cash money. In the early years, farmers frequently would go to the logging camps in wintertime to earn a little cash, but as the white pine got denuded, there were no longer those jobs available, and finding cash became a real problem. And one thing they had was a surplus of milk from their cows in summertime. And so so this was what instigated them to get together to try to organize cooperative creamery. The cooperative movement had actually started earlier in the 1800s. The first one was in Rockdale, England, but it had spread into Scandinavia, and it was something that was also promoted by Dean Henry of the School of Agriculture at the University of Wisconsin. And he was one of the promoters of that. They decided to issue 160 shares of stock, and the price of each share was $15. And that gave them a total capitalization of $2,400. But they had to, of course, they didn't get cash for, not very many people had the $15 in cash, and there were only 84 shares out of the 160 that were subscribed for, and the original shareholders, we had only 71 because 13 took 2 shares each, and Nelson Lawson and William Foster were 2 of the people who each took 2 shares. And only 14 paid the total for their shares. The rest would pay $5 down, and they then had to pay 10% interest on the balance. And they elected J.P. Scow, which is a name that's, of course, well known in Luck. I don't know precisely how he's related to the present Scows that we have in Luck, but he was the president. A.P. Christensen was the vice president. Nelson Lawson was the secretary, and Martin Christian Jensen was the treasurer. And then they authorized or requested Henry Hansen and Nelson Lawson to go visit other creameries to see what they were going to have to need. And these weren't just close by, so they were each authorized $15 to cover the cost of their travel to go and inspect other creameries. They decided that the first thing they had to build was an ice house, and they built that. It was 16 by 16 by 12 feet in height, and they hired my great-grandfather, Christian Henriksen, to take on the task. He got $8 for it, and the price of the lumber that went into building it was $18.58. And Hemming Olson was then given the job of filling the ice with the house with ice and sawdust, and they authorized $25 for that purpose. They also established the bylaws, and they established the number of directors at 7, and noticed that special meetings were to be posted at least 5 days prior to any such meeting at the post office, and that was the way it was organized. 3 bids for the construction of the creamery were received, and the contract was awarded to a fellow by the name of Hans Pierre for the sum of $180. And they also authorized the purchase of 107.5-gallon milk settling cans at $2 each, and 104-gallon cans at $1.25 each. And they also dug a well, and the first well was a failure, and they moved it slightly and dug a second time. And the second one, the water was declared good by a vote of 6-1. And they hired a guy to paint the creamery, and they paid him the magnificent sum of $3, but they provided the paint and the oil. And then they decided they had to bond the treasurer, and they were gonna bond him for $300, but MC Jensen, who was the treasurer, refused to be bonded. You don't trust me, I'm not gonna be bonded. And so he was replaced, he resigned, and they elected H.B. Christensen to be the treasurer instead. But construction schedule wasn't going to be met, and it soon became clear that they weren't going to get started with the Creamery in '85. And in fact, the board met in December of '85 and voted to pay the directors $5 each for their services and an additional $2 to the secretary. And that was their reward for having acted in that capacity. They then went on to get bids on providing 10 cords of wood, and that again went to Christian Henriksen, and he provided the wood for $16, and also the ice for the ice house for $16. And the executive committee authorized in the purchase of an engine if it looks like they're going to be ready to start in spring. And Fritz Hansen was called before the executive committee to give his opinion on what they needed in the way of a churn to churn the cream. And he offered to make a churn, and if it was satisfactory, the creamery would purchase it. If not, he would keep it. And in February, they met again, and in the February meeting, they authorized the board to make contact with Anders and Hannah Ravenholt, or Ravneholt as it was called in those days. They were my grandparents, and see if they could secure their services for the summer. And Anders would be gathering the cream 5 days a week, and then assist his wife. And Hannah was to take charge of the creamery and the making of the butter. And she'd been trained in the island of Fyn in Denmark prior to her marriage to Anders. My grandfather had been in this country, had come over in 1870, worked for some 4 years in Minnesota, both on farms and on construction railroads. And then he got the wanderlust and took a train to Salt Lake City and then an ox cart to Helena, Montana, where he then mined gold for 2 years in a mine there, the National Mining Company. Marlis and I visited it last summer, and it was kind of interesting going to that little town of Unionville, where he had mined gold for 2 years. And that, let's say, was 2 years of it was enough, living in a shack there with another Dane. And there were about 2,000 people in that area of Montana at that time. It was the richest gold mine in the area. And after the 2 years, he then managed to go first by rowboat with a German fellow down the Missouri River. And this was the year of the Battle of Little Bighorn, so it was not exactly a secure way to travel. But they made it to Bismarck, where they then got a steamship from there on down to St. Paul, and then he went to the expo in Philadelphia on his way back to Denmark. So he had an early and somewhat adventuresome life. In any case, they contacted them, and they also contacted the Comer brothers in St. Croix, who built wagons, and they purchased 2 spring wagons that could be used for cream collection and could be used with either 1 horse or 2. On April 2nd in 1986, the board met and adopted the rules for patrons' participation in the creamery. And the first rule was, and reads, that any patron found selling milk from an unhealthy cow or from cows still feverish from calving will be dropped and the case reported to civil authorities. No cream was to be taken from a cow's milk until 5 days after calving. Also, cream was not to be taken from any cows eating cabbages, turnips, or onions, as these would taint the milk. Further rules were adopted to assure the cleanliness and quality of the milk and the cream. And these included a ban on any sour or frozen cream. The cream had to be skimmed by the collector. You didn't skim it yourself. They skimmed it with a skimmer, a ladle type thing, and it had to be cooled to a temperature of 50 to 60 degrees, and it had to stand 12 to 24 hours before skimming in summer and 24 to 36 hours before skimming in the wintertime. Different milkings must not be mixed in the same can, and they were not permitted to use milk from a cow that had not been milked for 24 hours. So it was always a requirement that we milk the cows twice a day. I know that the good farmers these days milk them 3 times a day. It was also ruled that the cream level was to be so measured and skimmed that an inch of cream was to be the equivalent of a pound of butter. And they measured the cream in a glass tube on the side of the settling cans, and then they would skim the cream with this skimming ladle, which cost only 15 cents to each of the patrons, and the thermometers were 25 cents. And they printed 500 copies of the rules in Danish. On May 22nd, the board again met and agreed to pay Anders and Eiler Ravenholt for Ravneholt $66 per month, her credentials having passed muster. And they then decided to start the creamery on Monday, May 31st. And her services, Hannah's services, were contracted for a period of 5 months for that year, on the condition that she make good butter, keep the equipment in good working order, including the steam engine, and that she keep the creamery neat and clean, and keep such records as they may require. Her husband was to collect it, but 5 days a week. His route was some 20 miles, 21 or 22 miles, and they were going to withhold $20 of his pay for any charges that may result from damage suffered or from any failure to follow the rules or to achieve a pound of butter from each measured inch of cream, but with the proviso that if the creamery fails to operate for at least 4 months, he would receive an additional $20. They then also hired Christian Henriksen as the route man for $33 to collect from the other routes, and J.S. Malling was also hired to collect cream. And J.P. Peterson, who had the general store in West Denmark, was appointed purchasing agent. Now the creamery went into operation, but nobody had done anything about selling it. They hadn't done any survey of market. They suddenly discovered that they had, in June, that we've got butter that needs to be sold, and they agreed to send Peter Larson to Duluth and elsewhere and pay his expenses to see if he could find a market for the butter. And Andrew Peterson was to write parties in Shell Lake, Cumberland, and Barron to sell butter in those places, and they would sell it in lots of not less than 5 pounds at the Creamery if people wanted to come to the Creamery and buy butter. And they also decided to brand the butter Luck Creamery #1 with the horseshoe trademark branded on the bottom of each 60-pound wooden tub, which is how the butter was packaged for shipping. They also decided to sell buttermilk at 3/4 cent per gallon, and the 5 farmers were each to get buttermilk on a different day of the work week, and that was the way that was handled. But it was amazing that they had done no market research, and soon, of course, that they didn't find local markets for it, and they started then sending it to New York by rail, and it went to commission houses in New York, and they would haul it to Taylor's Falls, which is the nearest railroad, and looking at the minutes and also in Nelson Lawson's cash book, we find that they paid $2 to $2.50 for somebody with to haul the butter to Taylor's Falls and deliver it to the railroad. In August, the board then voted to pay the patrons 8 cents for each inch of cream they delivered in June and July. In October, they decided to operate the creamery through the first week in November, but to collect the cream only 3 times a week now. And they then also moved to pay the patrons not 8 cents, but 15 cents for each inch of cream they delivered in August and September. So they obviously found that they were getting enough money from the sale of butter that they could increase the amount that they were paying per inch of cream. The final account for 1986 showed that they collected 8,932.5 inches of cream, and they paid the patrons $1,030.69 from the 9,920 pounds of butter, which they had produced at a cost of $989. So basically it was costing them about 10 cents a pound to produce the butter. The following year, they again had to fill the ice house, and they contracted to get a cube of ice 12 feet by 12 feet by 10 feet in the 16 by 16 by 12 foot structure that they had. And they also bought firewood. They bought equal amounts of basswood, mixed hardwood, and hard maple, and contracted for that. Then they had a discussion on how they were going to run the creamery, and my grandmother Hannah offered to run the creamery to make butter for 1.5 cents per pound for the first 150 pounds of daily production, and 1 cent per pound for production above that amount. But they didn't accept that offer. They instead moved to pay her not $33 this year, but $30 per month. And her husband, my grandfather Anders, would also get $30. And the same was true with grandfather Christian Hendrickson. And Jens Jurgen Jensen Billy was awarded a collector's contract as well. for $24. I gather his rock was not as long, but then they also employed an H.P. Christensen, who was to run the engine, carry ice and wood, and weigh and mark the butter tubs, and he was being paid $15 per month. They started in '87 on May 2nd, so they started earlier than they had the previous year. And obviously they were in better shape, but they had a company in New York that hadn't paid for their 600 and some pounds of butter that they had gotten, and they made some effort to have that butter moved to another mission house in New York to sell it for whatever you could get for it. In '87, they started out with paying the patrons 10 cents per inch of cream delivered in May, and in June that was increased to 10.5 cents per month. And my grandmother Hannah decided that she really ought not to be responsible for washing the cream transportation cans, and the board then decided they were going to hire the woman who became my other grandmother, Maria Hendrickson, and she was going to get paid 50 cents a week to wash the cans. And cash book shows that for the summer of '87, she made a magnificent sum of $7. Something happened in the summer, the second summer of operation. They got concerned because my grandfather Anders was either not measuring as generously as Christian Hendrickson was, or he was skimming more carefully, because for every inch of cream he brought in, for every 16 inches of cream he brought in, they got an extra pound of butter. But Christian Hendrickson, for every 28.5 inches of cream he brought in, they got an extra pound of butter. And Billy was somewhere in between at about an extra pound of butter for every 21.5 inches of cream. And so the solution to that was to have Anders and Christian switch routes for the rest of the summer. The board would, and I don't understand the reason for it, but they changed the amount that they paid each month, and I realized they couldn't forecast long range just how much the butter was going to bring, but there was a good deal of variation. One month you'd get 8 cents for an inch of cream, and the next month you might get 15 cents, and that had to reflect, I suppose, both primarily the amount of money which they were getting in from the sales of butter. Anyway, in the annual meeting that was held in 1888, they now decided that they were going to advertise in the Dannevirke, which is the Danish language paper, to get a Danish creamery manager to run the creamery. And they advertised that they needed someone to run a creamery which has been in existence for 2 years in a large Danish settlement in Polk County, Wisconsin. There was no equal opportunity laws in effect in those days. You could make an ethnic discrimination wanted to. In any case, they apparently got one bid as a result of it. A fellow by the name of Rasmussen. My grandfather Anders also bid. He bid to operate it and take care of gathering the cream and other expenses for 23% of the price of butter. But Rasmussen was willing to do it for 21.5%. So instead of giving it to Rasmussen, they gave it to my grandfather as long as he would meet Rasmussen's price. Which he was then forced to do. At various times, the cream found it necessary to borrow operating funds, and the normal rate they were paying for money in those days was 10%, but they borrowed $350 from the Kohler brothers in St. Croix at 8% by giving them a mortgage on the creamery. And they operated through the summer of 1888. I haven't figured out just how they did it. My grandmother and grandfather, because on June 2nd my dad was born, and there's no indication that they hired some substitute or something. I don't know, maybe she had him on the floor of the creamery like a Chinese coolie. But she obviously was not a stay-at-home mom. At the January 1890 annual meeting, my grandfather requested they had taken a 3-year contract to run the creamery at the 21.5%, and then he requested to get out of the 3rd year of the contract, and it was never clear from the minutes what the reason is. I should tell you the minutes are a bit of a problem. The library has those that we have bound, but they started out in English, and I think that it was probably a later translation. Then they switched to Danish, and but then some of them didn't copy at all well, so you can't read it. And I don't read Danish that well, but I had a friend from Denmark who was with me, and she read through it with me to help me understand some of it, because it was very difficult in handwriting sometimes to understand the spelling, and therefore it became quite impossible to look up the words. In any case, for some reason the minutes are not complete and they peter out, but they did finally reach an agreement with my grandfather. He had to make certain payments in order to get out of his contract. He offered them an experimental churn that he had, or $25. They said they wanted the experimental churn and $25. They finally agreed that they would take the experimental churn and $15 or $40 in cash, whichever he wanted to. And they settled it, and they then advertised again in Dannevirke, and they got a fellow by the name of Hans Short, who was awarded the contract, and for 1890, and they also decided to pay the patrons at that time 10 cents per pound for butter for the month of April, then only 7 cents for May, and 6.5 cents for June, and 7.5 cents for July deliveries. But then in August they went up to 12 cents, and September deliveries they got 15 cents. And I know I read some other place that the price of butter had collapsed, and it may be that too many other people were getting into the creamery business. The West Denmark Creamery continued to operate in the January of '91 at the annual meeting. They had discussion on how they could get the patrons to deliver their milk as promised, or from the cows, and they were having some trouble getting cooperation from the farmers. I don't know whether it was other creameries in the area that were becoming the competitors. I know that Cushing Creamery started in 1894. I know that there was a creamery started in Milltown at about this time. The creamery at West Denmark continued to operate in '91. They returned some $8,470, but in '92 they had sales of butter of only $1,182, and in '95 they had only $666. I think we have a couple of other pictures that I want to show. That's another view of the creamery. Go ahead to the next one. This is the first Farmers Cooperative Creamery in the U.S., Danish Farmers Cooperative Creamery, and it was in Clark's Grove, Minnesota, and from what I was able to determine, it was started up about a decade before the West Denmark one. And Clark's Grove is down in Freeborn County, near Albert Lee. Next one. Oh, there's the picture of my grandmother in her buttermaker uniform. And you see that one on the wall in the main dish. Run into that in a number of places. I never knew her. She died in '91. And all I really know about her is what my mother has told me. I know my dad was very fond of her, but my mother said she was not a great housekeeper. She lived with them. My parents got married in 1917. She lived with them some 4 years before she passed away, although she had 2 daughters in the general area, but she lived instead with my father and my mother. Next one. There's a picture of my grandfather and Hannah, and that's my Aunt Christine. Christine Sorensen. Her husband is Ole Sorensen, and they lived up north of Luck most of the time that I knew them. Eventually moved to Solvang, California. And she was sort of a midwife in the community, would show up when women were having babies to help Dr. Arvidsson or whoever was doing delivery. I don't know how much experience she had, but she was not really a stay-at-home mom either. My dad had a younger sister as well. Actually, there were 7 children born into the family, and one of them was a boy that had been born in Denmark and died in Iowa. The other 2 died in infancy. So out of the 7 births, they only had 3 that lived to adulthood. Next one. This is Christian Hendrickson. He came over, I can't remember the year now, whether it was 82, and he had, Maria was a child at that time, and she was a teenager when she went to work in '87, so he was incidentally passed away in 1892, and I don't know, I've heard that it was gallbladder or appendicitis or something. He died at a fairly young age, and I know he was buried at the same service my mother was baptized. She was the first grandchild born. Next. I don't know if I mentioned, but my grandparents, when they gave up the creamery, moved out to the farm that they then built halfway between Luck and Milltown, where the gas works is now. And they operated the creamery from 92 to 98, and sold cream to New York. And the building in the middle was the creamery. It was not nearly as big as the one that was Denmark, but I remember from my childhood, we still referred to it as the Majalit, and Majalit was the Danish word for creamery. And this was, we had some artifacts in there, I remember, and my older brother decided to clean out the shed. This was after we moved out here by the golf course. When he came home from the Navy, he decided we don't need all that junk around, so he threw it all away. And so we have nothing left of the creamery. I don't know if there are any comments or questions. I don't know what year the creamery started at North Luck. You got a picture of those? There's one of them. I can remember delivering cream to that. I was one of, well, the first time that I really got to drive horses by myself in a buggy in summertime, and with the cutter in the wintertime, and a couple times a week we'd haul cream to the creamery up North Luck. I think there's one other picture of it there that shows it. And it was, the thing I liked best about hauling the cream to the creamery was going in, and they had a dipper there, and you could open a faucet and get a dipper of fresh buttermilk. It was very refreshing to drink. Is that it?
Yeah, I think the rest of them you didn't want to show, right? So,
Not really, that was Peterson
Yeah.
family, but I don't know anything about that.
yeah, we can stop then.
That's a picture of Lowers Peterson.
Pardon?
It's a picture of Lowers Peterson family.
Yeah.
And all the kids took the name Lowers. And that's where you have the Lowerson family.
Oh.
And there are quite a few of them around yet. Do you know what this is? One was a banker.
I should say that one of the sources that I had for information are some books that my daughter found in an estate sale in Arlington, Virginia, called Danske America. And they're books that, well, let's say there is a chapter on Danes in Polk County, and in this one there's a chapter on land use and creameries in the U.S. and where the Danes settled. And you're certainly free to look at those if you want to. Thank you.
Busy out in the hall are two of our officers, Bob Newholm and Chuck Dickerman, cranking away on the ice cream. And if you just will give them a little time to crank some more, you might actually have some homemade ice cream.
So now there was a butter churn going around too.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that needs a lot more cranking, I think, yet, too.
Must have got a picture of one of all different kinds of churns.
Let me get that. I'll put this back on here.
I should tell you that Robert Peterson has a big churn. I haven't seen it, Robert.
Oh, I was gonna try to find a picture. We went over and took a picture of it.
Yeah.
But I gotta see if I can find it here.
The truth is, if you're wondering whether or not you're gonna make butter with that, a little bit of heat really makes a difference. So you hold it up on your chest and then do it, and you'll find in a hurry.
Well, I froze the cream that was in there, so when I took it out this morning. I bought some ahead of time, froze it, took it out. It was all kind of, when I put it in here, kind of thick, and I thought, well, it should be quicker to make butter maybe if it was froze, but I don't know.
Frozen.
Yeah.
It's not permitted to let the cream freeze before you make butter.
Yeah. Maybe it doesn't work then, huh? Let's see here. Do you know when the co-op, this quit, this one did as a co-op or? Yeah. It closed as a co-op, didn't it?
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, but I don't know.
York bought it,
York bought it,
and then went broke.
and then he went broke. Was he, I read someplace that there was a York that was working in the Bone Lake Creamery later, and he may have gone out there then.
He built the Connepack house.
Yeah. That's, I've heard that too, yeah. Yeah, I've heard he built that house. Well, it could be the price of butter, because that got depressed when too many people got into the business.
You might as well get a cup of coffee or a cookie or something too.
I don't know if you looked at these, see, if you look at these, people were not seeing there. You have one, that's what I thought we did, yeah. Pardon? That, I think, is an addendum to this one. 5 cents. They both were published, both copyrighted the same year, 1909.
I see you on the 30th. Okay. Yeah.
I can't find the slide. Here's Chuck standing by the churn that's over here on N at Ron Peterson's place. Robert Peterson's place. Anyway, that's an old churn. That's a big barrel. It's about 8 foot long, maybe 5 foot diameter.
That's an old church.
Yeah, it's over here. I see what's happening now. Yeah, deer get more active. I like to see them.
I tried the blender and it wouldn't work for me. Add some bread, add some bread.
We always make it fair. The last years, County Fair, butter. All of them were
not being in charge.
all my cousins. They all make butter.
Well, and we,
If I make butter, I can get it.
The book is the only place she knows it came from. I have what looks to be like it was a photograph, but it's the same picture. And, I have a it's, you know, who knows?